I'm Julie Barkey with Session Update. Steve's Law is a bill designed to help prevent heroin overdoses, and on Tuesday, the bill cleared the Senate floor.
This bill would allow first responders, police officers, paramedics, and trained lay people to carry Narcan or naloxone. The families of an addict who are having trouble getting them clean could actually have some on hand instead of having to call 911 and do CPR, as some of them have had to do numerous times. It's a small relief, but it's something when you have a family member who is addicted.
The police department does many times will lower sentences for someone if they give us good information, or, as I would put it, for the greater good. Steve's Law removes the threat of prosecution for the greater good, members, for life. I hope you'll support this. I will be supporting this because I think it's important that we look at the greater good in this situation.
There being 65 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to.
The bill passed unanimously, and Senator Chris Eaton sat down with us on the Capitol Report set minutes later to share her success and the personal story behind the legislation. Before we get into the details of the actual legislation, tell me kind of the story about how this came about and how you decided to carry it.
I was involved with a group. Last year I was working on an alcohol tax, and I got involved with a recovery group that we were talking about what we could do with addiction, getting involved into the Affordable Care Act, MNsure. And I ran into Lexi Reed Holcomb, and she told me the story about her fiance, who was Steve Rumler, who the bill is written for. And I shared the story about my daughter, who also died of a heroin overdose because the person who was with her didn't get help.
So this is very personal for you.
Oh, yeah.
And so tell us a little bit about when you saw this. Was it hard for you to move forward with it, knowing that it was such a personal attachment?
Well, initially I agreed to do the bill and pursue it as Steve's Law and let the Steve Rumler for Hope Foundation take care of all the details. And then as I went to more, this started over a year ago, as I went to more meetings and organizations, I started telling the story of my daughter, and it just became part of the whole campaign. And it's actually been very therapeutic. I'm looking forward to the first life saved.
If you don't mind, for the sake of the viewers who don't know the story about your daughter, do you mind sharing that story?
Oh, not at all. She was 23 and apparently had been using heroin for a while. I was not aware of this, but she met her and a friend, a male friend, went together and met a drug dealer in the parking lot of a fast food restaurant in Burger King in Brooklyn Center. I was not going to say the name. But he jumped in the back seat, dropped off $20 worth of heroin and grabbed their $20 off the console. And then they injected the heroin in her car. And the young man stepped out of the car to have a cigarette, and when he looked back in, she wasn't responsive. And so he tried spraying her with water and everything and couldn't get a response, and he panicked. He went inside the fast food restaurant and hid all the paraphernalia and everything in the bottom of a garbage can. Came back to the car and tried to slap her awake and stuff. And a police going through the drive-through, a police officer, was actually a woman, noticed the ruckus and went over there, and he denied knowing what was wrong with her. So she began CPR and called for the ambulance. And they had a pretty good idea what it was, but it was too late. It was like 45 minutes. So the naloxone or Narcan didn't work.
And so let's talk a little bit about your bill. There's 3 major provisions to it. One is allowing certain people to carry an opiate antagonist, which is, why don't you explain what that is?
Well, it's naloxone is the generic name, or the brand name is Narcan. And it now comes in a nasal spray and an injectable form like an EpiPen they use for allergies. So It's really easy to use, and it basically takes up all the receptors of the brain that had the heroin, narcotic, opioid on them, and it kind of kicks them off. So that reverses the effects of the narcotic. Usually takes like 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes.
So comparable to an EpiPen.
Yes.
And the second and third provisions provide immunity to healthcare professionals and Good Samaritans. Why was it so important to you to provide this immunity to people? It seemed to be the only controversial provision.
Right. Well, I believe there's a possibility my daughter would be here today if the young man with her knew that he would be immune from prosecution if he had called for help. I mean, they had cell phones. They were sitting in a car. He didn't. He was fearful of arrest. I don't know if he had any idea. He had used too, if he had any idea how serious it was with her. But he was clearly trying to protect at least himself from arrest, if not her too. And I think the provision of this bill, if the word is out clear that if you call when someone's overdosing, you are safe from arrest, people will start calling.
Your bill passed through the full Senate, 65-0 was that final vote. We're still waiting for activity in the House on this, but how are you feeling? And you mentioned earlier you're excited about saving a life.
It's been a lot of work, and it's pretty overwhelming, actually, to have it pass the Senate. Probably the next exciting thing will be the governor signing it, and hopefully he will. And but the first time I hear of someone's life being saved because of having put the naloxone in all the first responders' hands and out in the community more, I know it's going to be very emotional.
Okay, Senator Chris Eaton, thanks for sharing your story. We certainly appreciate it, and we congratulate you on this 65-0 vote on your bill. Thank you.
Thank you.